Welcome everybody, how you doing? Good. All right, great. My name is Lenny Hall. I'm a flooring contractor in the Southeast Florida area. I say Miami because the little place I'm at, nobody ever heard of it before. But I'm a custom hardwood floor contractor. That's my passion. That's what I focused all my energy on. And when I started, I had no idea that I would end up doing the work that I ended up doing over all those years. I was just basically a broom sweeper, gopher, go-getter. Wanted to learn everything I could. In any case, what I've learned over the years, I'm going to condense in about 18 minutes. But I encourage you, if you don't get enough here, sign up for all the NWFA schools. What you have in front of you here is what most people have in front of their shop. All right, so in your shop, you're going to have stuff that's left over. And most people don't know what to do with it. Most people throw it out. I don't like throwing out anything because when I look at what I see here, which is a pile of leftover wood, I see potential. I see potential to make something beautiful out of it. And this is what we're going to talk about, is really, how do you do this? Well, first off, you got to get people to buy the borders, right? How do you get, if you're doing 2 1/4 strip in your location and you're just doing the plain #1 common natural and that's all you've ever done, how do you get somebody excited to buy borders? Well, this is how I learned on my own that when I carried them to the job site for an estimate that had nothing to do with the estimate itself, people got interested. So I would carry odd borders, medallions, inlays, and I would just say to the customer, look, I'm not going to let this sit in my hot car in South Florida. Can I bring this in the house for a minute? And she said, yeah. Boom, I'd lay it in a corner, talk to her about her estimate, she asked me questions, and eventually 1 out of every 3 or 4 clients would say, well, that's pretty, what's all that about? And it gives me the opportunity to tell people about the fact that I can do borders for them. And I would almost get a border on every job. At one point, our company had every crew doing borders for almost 2.5 years straight. Whether it's a simple straight line border or something very ornate, it didn't matter. We were constantly doing borders. We did more borders than most people get a chance to do in a lifetime, and I'm very grateful for that opportunity. Behind me on the monitor and on the floor here are borders that I've actually made in my shop that had nothing to do with the client. It was just me tinkering on the saw, cutting up scrap pieces of wood, putting them in the different configurations, finishing them, staining them, or leaving them natural. So with that, I'm going to talk about how to do a border detail. What I have here is a brick. Now inside this brick is a bunch of leftover mesquite 3-inch blocks. Okay, the reason why I put it in a brick is because you can set up a chop saw and cut the same repetitive square block over and over again and eventually make a square block border. But because people usually spend more money on things that are a little more fancy, I like to fancy up the floor a bit. So with this block, I'm able to set up a table saw with an angle, and I will cut one cut on this block, but I have another block already set up. So excuse me for a second. Okay, oh, sorry. Okay, I'm on, okay. So what I've done is actually cut a whole bunch of pieces at a 10-degree angle. Now, why did I pick 10 degrees? Just because. Because when you do borders, you really want to be very artistic about it, and you can make any angle you want, but cutting up things in blocks helps you do things without having to make 15, 20 repeat cuts. So I like cutting things in blocks. This one's already been cut on both sides of the block, so I'm going to open this up. And there's your border inside. All right, we can do some pretty cool things. If I had this leftover wood, I could take this, make an end grain border out of it, or you can take straight wood lumber, flooring material, cut the same size blocks, and you can have a straight border detail. You can put 2 bands of wood on the outside of it, and that starts your border. All from scrap lumber. I can set up a jig, cut that 3 1/4 American cherry into 3 1/4 slots, sizes, and have a whole row of American cherry pieces. But I like to fancy things up a bit, so I cut my 10-degree angle on the table saw. It could be 15 degrees, it doesn't matter. And you can see that now I have added some more interest to that border, is that my pieces have a little angle between them. But that's not all. There's more things you can do to fancy up that border. Okay, what I have here is a piece of wenge, which I've already resawed yesterday in preparation for today. Resawing is merely just taking a piece of wood and cutting it to a different thickness. So it used to be a piece of 3 1/4 wenge, which I have right here. And so I cut it to the same thickness as my mesquite blocks. After cutting this blank, then I can take my mesquite block, and I'm doing this without a tape measure. I take my mesquite block and put it inside my table saw, between the table saw and the fence, and just make sure it just gently slides against the teeth. Now I have my thickness ready. I can rip these down into little pieces. Once I rip a series of pieces, again, I do block cutting so that I don't have to repeat the same cut over and over again. So these little guys here are the ends of my long sticks of wenge. The tape held them together so they wouldn't fall apart. That's the end of the cut. And here's some of the other pieces that I cut. But in my case, all I need to have is a top row and a bottom row that's in a straight line, and the table saw is cut the two side walls as an angle. So what I have here, let me grab a piece of feature strip here. All right, this was my border before. And just to throw out a number out here, if somebody wanted that as a border in their house, I would take my standard 2 1/4 floor, and I say that all the time because people in the rest of the country install 2 1/4 in South Florida. We're doing 5-inch planks and exotics and what have you. But inserting from a plain plank floor, that border, I imagine you could get yourself an extra $5, $10, $15 a lineal foot from stuff you didn't have to buy. It's all scrap. For me, that's two things. Priceless for the fact that it's 100% profit on material. 2, the owner is happy that they don't have the same thing everybody else has. It's unique to them, it's got their personality on it, it's something that they would want to have, and they're willing to pay money for it. It's amazing how much money people will part for something that's unique to them. So, I have my border here. When I go from this one to this one, wow, now I got even a cooler looking border, and I can easily double the price per foot. And what did I do? I strapped a bunch of blocks inside some tape, and I gang ripped it twice on the table saw and pulled them out of the case. Now, to even make it more fancy, as I said, I have my little wenge blocks. And if I do it right, anybody see how this is going? If I want to tie it all together, I would even rip a little piece of wenge and put it on either side of the maple. Now I got an even more cool looking border. Again, all out of scraps. It takes just imagination, some practice time on your saw to be able to do really cool looking borders, okay? Now, most of the things you see here are job finished materials, unfinished rosewood, unfinished wenge, unfinished American cherry. But you know, a lot of the market today is doing pre-finished stuff. And so I was able to walk through the show yesterday as people were putting their booths together. And I asked the guy, I said, hey, can I take some of those? He goes, yeah, they're scraps, they're cuts, I'll throw them out. I said, cool. So I grabbed them. These are the leftovers of them. And you can make borders for that very floor, or any floor for that matter, if you got pre-finished materials, as long as you mill it to the right thickness. Now, you can take a 5/8 product like this, put it into a 1/2-inch floor. How? You basically take off the material from the bottom, make it the same thickness, use a caliper or micrometer, so you have the same thickness, you can put it in the floor. By hand, you can copy the factory bevel, you can add a little tint of stain to it. But what I've done is I've taken that wood material and I made a board out of it. I'm going to show you how this works in a second. All right, so you're on a job site, and if you're a one-only contractor and you don't have a showroom and you don't have anything other than you on a job site, and you can convince somebody to have a border made, literally I did this out of scrap material. That is a pallet block scrap I picked up here, and I screwed it to the table saw's miter gauge. So what I can do is I can set this to 45 degrees, or any degree for that matter, for what I'm going to do. If I can get this thing open, here we go. All right, that's a 45-degree cut. And oh, when you get these things, they're real sloppy. You notice the blue tape on either side of it? That's to take up the slop. So if you can add 1, 2, or 3, or 4 layers of blue tape, so when it's in your fence area here, there's no side play. So I'm going to Turn the mic off for a second now and make a few cuts. Am I off? Am I off? Hope so. Still on? I can't tell. Now I'm off. Okay. What are you doing? Oh, is the vacuum not on? All right, so basically I started my 45 cut, and I'm going to start cutting repeat 45 cuts on this thing now. Am I on? Am I on? Okay, but basically what you're going to see is that I took that pre-finished material and I ripped repeated cuts at an angle. Now 45 is just an angle, it could be any angle you want, but what it does, it creates you a border detail. I'm going to push my little mesquite border out of the way here. Use these two guys as my frame. And turn around, there you go. And out of scrap material, I just made a cool looking border. It can be any size you want, okay? Customize it for the owner. So they're the only ones on the planet that have it. And you don't know how deep you touch their ego when you tell a customer, this is your border, you're the only one that has it, and it's awesome. And they're like, yeah. And dude, they put the extra zero in the checkbook. It's amazing how much they'll pay for something that's uniquely theirs and nobody else has it. You look at the stuff behind me, and that's all that is. It's just presenting borders to people, telling them that we can do something unique for them, and more often than not, man, they bite. And who else could do it for them? Nobody else can. You got to be an artist about this thing. So here's a cool looking border, but the cool thing too is that we can take that border, make the opposite grain cut, and now we have this kind of border looking thing going on. All right? So that's the same cut, same setup. I just would turn the board with the tongue the other way, and my grain starts running backwards. On top of that, to make it even more fancy, I did these yesterday, pre-did them. And remember, if I had a light colored, or if I bought a bundle of this material from the factory that made it in a natural, I'd be able to board it on the outside with its own product. Set these guys aside. This is what I made yesterday. Get rid of the blue tape. This, you might recognize this because it's one of these down here. And this came from the factory. That's the factory light board. Now, how cool is that? I didn't pay 1 penny for any of this wood you see here. The customers had paid for everything that ever came back to my shop because they paid for it when they ordered the wood to begin with. So you can do a lot of creative things completely without any money out of pocket. Just spend time in your shop, play, have fun. Attend the NWFA schools because these things are taught at the schools at the intermediate and the advanced levels, and you can get into really neat craftsmanship work. And again, pre-finished. Factory finished stuff falls in the same category as what you see here. If you're interested in doing borders, I found out this the hard way, but a more effective way is you see this little baton here, this little angle piece of wood. I was in a frame shop getting one of my floor pictures framed for my office, and I stood back there and I had an epiphany. I looked at all the different frames that guy had, and I'm like, man, I need to do that with my borders. So in my shop, there are literally tens of dozens of these things right here. And how cool are they? Because if you just got your regular 18 by 18 panel at your shop of your basic woodwork that you work with all the time, all you gotta do is go like this to the owner. And next thing you know, they can see the border around their floor. Now this is just a simple 5-inch plank with a 1-inch wangy border on the outside. But you can make this kind of border, mount it to your plywood, label it on the back what it is, and I'll tell you, this is so old, that's Bona silk mat. Okay? But you know, if somebody had 5 different floors and they wanted to see what they look like on a border, you can swap in and out. You don't have to build the border onto the panel. So it's a very mobile, very unique way to be able to alter the look of the border details. If they like the floor and they want different borders, you can put that from corner to corner to corner. Or you can take one of these guys here, which by the way has a thing I call a 7-band border. 3 rows, a center row, and 3 rows. You've seen it in the photographs because I've seen it, I have it wrapped around curves and columns. But the 7-band border is really unique because it's pretty wide, but it's very dressy. It's very high impact on that border detail. And of course this is the corner block for the border. Along with that one, this is like its cousin. So if they don't like that one, the border's too light, they got this one, the border's a little darker. Pre-make these things. Have them standing around your shop. Have them stand them in your truck. Put them in your truck. Take them to the job site. Have them where people can see them. Because until they see this stuff, first they don't know it's even available. Then they don't know you're the guy or girl that can actually do this work. So this is just the entryway of getting it into the house, getting paid more for what you're worth, and being able to do stuff with material you'd throw it away.